A lot of people are curious about moving to Portugal, but they're afraid they're not going to earn enough money to have a good standard of life. Hey expats and travelers alike, I'm Josh with Expats Everywhere, and in this video today, our interviewee Carl addresses those fears and gives you guys a lot of optimism so that you can know if you're making the right decision for you and your family. Well, hello and welcome to Expats Everywhere. If you could tell us your name, where you're from, and a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Carl Munson, originally from the UK and now in Portugal for 3 years. I came with my family, with two children at the time, and we've had a third here in Portugal.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Much. Yeah, he's two now.
Nice.
Mm.
So what countries have you worked in abroad?
This is where I feel a little bit embarrassed
Mm.
compared to a lot of the people you might speak to. I haven't. I've traveled abroad for work, and I've long thought of myself as, a long time ago, when I saw the potential of, what's now known as the digital nomad, I thought, oh, yeah, I'd like that. I'd really like to do that. I'd like to move all around the world. But really, I'm not that. I haven't turned out to be that guy in reality. Portugal is really my one and only experience of moving abroad and starting working abroad, or starting a new life, including working abroad.
Nice. Well, that's not a bad thing. We have a huge audience interested in Portugal. People that I'm sure have seen you about. You have the gift of gab. If you guys didn't know, this is your man in Portugal. Carl Munson has an awesome show called Expats Portugal, and this whole platform really, because you do more than just your YouTube show, has really helped a lot of people kind of understand what's happening in Portugal, current events, cultural things, a bit of language. So in this interview today, we're going to dive into some of that stuff. We're also going to kind of give Carl's origin story, I hope, is something that we're going to be able to do, kind of talk about how he got started here and how he's finding life here. And if at any point you guys want to skip around, we'll put the chapter notes in here so you guys can do that. So feel free, but we hope that you watch it from start to finish because Carl is a super interesting guy, very, very easy on the mic. So we appreciate that. Let's talk a bit about work in Portugal. If you could tell us, some of the jobs that are available from the other expats that you've talked to.
I think that's quite tough. I really do. And when I came, I had a contract in hand, or a work opportunity in hand that I was able to transfer from the. In fact, I'd just been made redundant, and funnily enough, a guy who I was talking to the day before I was made redundant offered me some work, and he ended up following me to Portugal. Actually, I said, I'd love to work for you, but I'm going to Portugal, and sometime later he said, you're going to Portugal. I think I'd like to do that. We went on holiday there. It seems like, and together, me and Mike of our net, that is a social network idea, came and got involved in the startup culture in Portugal, which we were in an incubator with Aveiro University. Still are. It's an amazing amount of support. And an expression of the Portuguese support of innovation and of expats coming over and starting companies. Met a lot of other expats there in the PCI, it is, in the Aveiro University. But to address your question, I think it's pretty tough trying to find a job in Portugal. From what I've seen, you do well to have a foreign contract or a native contract in your hand for two reasons. One is because you'll have a job in a country where it's now getting more and more difficult to get a job, and you'll probably likely be better paid.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that we're seeing a lot of people, especially from the United States, that are either coming over for retirement or they are moving their digital job that they have in the US with them over to Portugal to maybe live for lower cost or just a different lifestyle, right?
Yeah. And it's hot news that it can form part of a visa requirement as well, or a type of visa where if you work for, you can be working for a non-Portuguese company on a contract, and that can be part of a visa process that is recognized by Portugal now. So they're seeing how useful that is to have people come here and spend money, live here, be a citizen, of course, be a temporary resident at first, and then, go for full citizenship ultimately if you really want to, but that you can be here paying tax in Portugal whilst getting your wages, salary paid from a country outside of Portugal.
That's right.
Yeah.
How much can someone expect to earn in Portugal?
Within the Portuguese economy?
Yes.
It's quite unfortunate, and it's that, it's that kind of expat guilt thing. You have to get that balance right, don't you? Of like, how much of this is just like canny business sense that I'm moving somewhere where my money's going further, or
Mm,
am I exploiting a local economy? And
mm.
when you talk about the minimum wage of Portugal, it just feels like, wow, I'm so much more wealthy than Portuguese people, and it goes into that sort of exploitation area, because I believe the minimum wage in Portugal is just under 700 euros a month. There's a funny thing. Portuguese people get paid 14 months a year. You don't hear that bit so often, which pushes it up a little bit. But still, if you're comparing that to North American wages, there's no comparison, is there?
Hmm. How do you think it compares to the actual cost of living, though?
Well, there's the thing.
Hmm.
And still, I wonder how Portuguese manage to make ends meet, even if there's two people in the household earning that minimum wage. But Portuguese culture, a lot of family support, maybe doing two or three jobs. Portuguese people are very hardworking. So that's how I imagine they make ends meet. And they have a lot of family support. There's less of the nuclear family, more of the big family structure, kids getting looked after and that sort of thing. So you're not necessarily paying for childcare. But yeah, that will be mitigated by a much more favourable standard of living or cost of living in Portugal.
Hmm. It's interesting that you bring up childcare because I think, Kaylee has been looking into childcare for our little one. We have some friends who uh, have their kids in creche. Are
Mm.
you familiar with the creche system?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So creche seems to be much more affordable than it would be elsewhere. I mean, we're talking like under 300 euros per month. So, okay, let's kind of move on from the job situation and how much you expect to earn and talk about really how far the money can go. So, what do you think is a reasonable amount someone needs to be earning from their digital job or from their pension to make a way of life here?
That's a great question, and I hear of people from North America, for example, saying, we're a bit worried. We've only got 2,000 euros a month coming in.
Mm.
House income. Are we going to cut it in Portugal? Are we going to starve to death? And it's like other people who are already here thinking, whoa, these guys are going to live the life of luxury like kings and queens over here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, 1,000 even. If you've got 1,000 as a target, and you're light on your feet, if you're a digital nomad, I think that would be a useful figure to work towards, 1,000 euros a month to cover your costs. And then obviously anything you can make over and above that, you're going to enjoy life better and better, more and more here in Portugal.
Would you say it's a thousand per person, or can a couple make it on 1,000?
They could, but yeah, I think 1,000 per person. Then you really are living a very comfortable life. But yes, 1,000 for a couple, it is still doable. I mean, it all depends, doesn't it? I saw an amazing story about a South African family. I think they moved to Coimbra. Financially, they're struggling. The pandemic curveball,
Mhm.
the crashing economy as a result. They are struggling financially, but they know they've made the right decision. They were comparing and contrasting life in South Africa, and it was like they wouldn't go back for anything. They would say like, we had three cars and this, that, and the beautiful house, this, that, and the other, and now we live in a flat and we haven't got enough to make ends meet, but we feel safe,
Mm.
and we love our life in Portugal, and we're going to make this work. So the stakes are lower. I guess that's another consideration, isn't it? If you go to a very high overhead country, as each month goes by, you're going deeper and deeper into debt, aren't you? That process will be slower, and it will give you more room to work in Portugal for sure. I mean, as an example, we're very lucky. We don't live in a metropolitan centre, and that's how we like it. We live on the edge of a town. I look out of my window and I can see a vineyard. We have a deal where we pay 400 euros a month for our apartment, and that includes the electricity and water. We just have to put broadband on top of that. Now, so if you compare that with your income of 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, it's very affordable.
No, you're exactly right. I'm glad that you brought up where you live because a lot of times, when we're talking with expats in different places, we're usually talking about the capital or maybe the second city. So, for example, here in Portugal, you guys will know that we're talking about Lisbon and Porto.
Yeah.
Well, we have someone that's not in either one of those places, which is great. So, Carl, can you tell us a bit about where you live and maybe some other places that people should consider living that are not named Lisbon and Porto?
Oh yeah, for sure. So where I live is a town called Anadia, and it's interestingly, we didn't look on the map. I moved, like I said, I moved here 3 years ago. I've
You
been
threw a
wanting.
dart at the map, didn't you?
No, I had an idea of how I would like it to be,
Okay.
and it's not where we live.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
The view out of the window is, I feel like I'm quite rural here,
Hmm.
but we can walk into a town that's got everything, all the facilities, and a railway station to walk to. It's very well connected, but it's not the. When I first wanted to move to Portugal 10 years ago, it was really to be a kind of a digital off-gridder, if that's not a contradiction, but to be out in the sticks, out in the countryside, move away from the madness of civilization,
Hmm.
but still connected to the internet and work from home. And as most expats know, don't they? Certainly people who aren't necessarily moving around enjoying the world from that nomadic point of view, but wanting to put roots down somewhere, it never quite works out. I mean, this, that it never quite works out as you plan. But at the same time, I have no complaints. So where we are is a town called Anadia, just on the edge of the town, and that's in the district of Aveiro. Now, people will have heard of Aveiro, which is the Venice of Portugal, and probably after Lisboa and Porto, it's one of those highly sought after cities, hence the rising rental prices and so on. Aveiro. And it is beautiful. I think the comparison you're making, go to Lisboa, Porto, and you're going to be up against those big overheads. Come here, 400 a month, and it can be less than that. So when you say where else might people consider, the Silver Coast for sure, the Figueira de Foz, San Martinho de Porto, Alcobaça, Caldas de Reina. These are really cool places. Nazaré, people will know the surfing of Nazaré, right? The biggest waves in the world and highly sought after surfing destination. That's a great place to consider. But then again, so is central Portugal, where I thought I would end up. Go towards the Serra da Estrela Mountains, go into where all these people are, off-gridders and the preppers of Portugal are all out there. And, the overheads there, by comparison, are tiny. But then you've got, you need to want to live in the middle of nowhere and be away from these sorts of things. But what I'd recommend is coming and visiting, coming and trying the experiences of the different parts of Portugal, because it's not that big and it doesn't take too long to get anywhere in Portugal. So I could come and see you, couldn't I, in 2 hours?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we live very different lifestyles.
Hmm.
I could go down to Lisbon and experience Lisbon in 2 hours and experience a very different lifestyle. And if I travel east for 2 hours, I'm getting towards Spain. And again, I would have a very different lifestyle experience. And that's what I would encourage people to do, especially if they're of that expat nomadic vibe and they're keen to experience Portugal in all its glory. When you can, come and do that. Because again, even though you're like in a cafe in central Portugal, there's Wi-Fi there, and like the next cafe, there's Wi-Fi there. Portugal has this beautiful hybrid of wanting to be at the cut and thrust of technology, as well as the I don't know if it's actively preserving the old world, but that's happening anyway. It's like
It's
the
organic. Yeah, it's organic the way it's being preserved.
best of both worlds, best of both worlds.
Yeah, you touched on a very key word, which is lifestyle, which leads me into my next question, because we're not talking about Lisbon and we're not talking about Porto, and you brought up €1,000 per month per person as being kind of the benchmark. Do you think that €1,000 is enough where you are, and what kind of lifestyle can you live?
In the town where I live,
Yes.
as a single person, I could have a great life on a
Okay.
thousand.
Mm,
And with two of us doing that, it's perfectly adequate. We've got 3 children as well, so
mm.
they're going to be munching their way into that cash pile as the older and bigger they get. But we've both got growing businesses, fortunately. But still, that baseline, that target, I think, is useful for people just to give them an idea. And of course, it's so subjective, isn't it? I mean,
Mm.
some people would not want to live the simple lifestyle that I do. And other people's aspirations are very different. But generally speaking, the ratio of, if you're working for a corporation in United States, United Kingdom, and you've got that level of income coming in, but you're placed in Portugal, you are going to do well.
Yep.
If I can put it like that, that's probably a more useful way of understanding that ratio.
Yep. Okay. So let's say that we're in Aveiro, and are there any products that or things that you can't find that you would recommend people bring from their home country?
Oh, amazing. Um, Not in Aveiro, no. There is in the city of Aveiro. There is a, I can't remember what it's called now, but there's this shop that seems to specialize in exploiting what is it called? The Portuguese call it saudade, don't they? The homesickness.
Hmm.
They say there's no other word for it, but the closest we get is homesickness.
Hmm.
And this shop in it might be a Portuguese shop that understands human nature and the need for people to connect with the products of their native country. But this shop seems to have everything. Loads of things from America that you would understand and recognize. Things from my country, brown sauce, baked beans, Marmite, all that kind of caper and sweets
Yeah.
and stuff. So, and you're really not that far away from it.
Is it proper HP and Tetley's?
Oh, it's very specialist there,
Yeah.
George. I think it probably is.
Yeah. And then can you rattle off some products that they have from America?
Well, the names I recognise are things, Hershey bars, and
Mm.
the sort of things that Americans tend to complain about not
Yeah.
having access to, in a normal shop in a supermarket. This shop has it, and I honestly think too much is made of that. Oh no, how are we going to get by without a Hershey bar? Because you've got Amazon, haven't you? And you've got, there are. It's not like the 1970s anymore,
That's right.
where you're going to have to fly home for Thanksgiving and once a year enjoy the things you used to love.
That's
We
right.
live in, we live in a, well, I know it's been seriously undermined with how things are at the moment with the pandemic, but generally speaking, we do live in an incredibly globalized world, and that is really not a big problem.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You want to see two people quarrel. You get an American and a Brit together and throw a Cadbury and a Hershey in there and it's game on, right?
Oh, that's
The-
still barbecue sauce and HPC.
oh,
It's like, what in you Americans? What's that about?
that's funny. It is what it is. So you touched on safety earlier with the South African family, how they wanted to stay in Portugal despite um, not kind of meeting their monthly threshold of income because
Mm,
of safety. So let's
yes.
talk a bit about that. Is it safe there, and do you feel safe on a personal level?
Yeah, and I was just thinking to myself, is it right to say that I don't lock my front door? Because now everybody knows I don't lock my front door.
Mm. What's your
Because
address again?
but there's an indication. And I heard this most beautiful thing the other day, is that Portugal is a safe place to leave your door open. And obviously, I don't want anyone suing me. Like, it's just a,
We're going to put a disclosure down at the bottom.
yes, like we're not telling you to leave your door open, but just as a lovely story about Portugal, the sort of general vibe you could experience here. Not only can you leave your door open, but you're likely to find a bag of oranges in the hallway when you come back. That is true.
That
I know.
happened.
Yeah, it does happen. I didn't have oranges inside my door, but I had kiwi fruit.
Oh,
In last week, a friend from a town along the way, one of my Portuguese BFFs. This is really important. Making friends with local people is so important to do that. And you can make some great friends, and it's a really good way of properly getting into the culture, such that you get a bag of kiwi fruit. He went home. He left the bag of fruit. He went home and then sent a little Facebook messenger. Are you okay? Is everything okay? Left you a bag of fruit outside. How lovely is that?
that's
That's
great.
sort of cultural concierge, isn't it?
That's awesome. So I don't know if I would give the same advice in Lisbon or Porto. Not that either one of those places are dangerous. I would just say that they're less safe than where you are.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and it's
It's a city.
it's an urban rural thing,
That's
isn't it?
it.
There are so many people in the cities. It's a numbers game. You don't know who everybody is, but in a smaller town and in a village, everyone knows everyone. So of
That's
course they're
it.
a little bit safer. That's how anyone who's read *Sapiens* knows that, don't they? That we have this 150 people thing, don't we?
Yeah.
And that's village life. That's village scale. And I'm sure the same is true of in an apartment block. Once you get to know everybody, you have your own vertical village, don't you? That way.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that definitely happens. I mean, we've unfortunately not been able to meet many of our neighbors,
Not
and the building that we're in particular is not very occupied because a lot of it is short-term rentals, and there's nobody even turning those doors right now.
okay.
Uh, but going back to your point, I mean, I grew up in a smaller town in the U.S., and certainly growing up, we had that same thing where it's like, yeah, you could leave your door open, your car unlocked, whatever. And Kaylee came from a more urban area, and she's like, that's crazy. You
What are you
know,
doing?
yeah, she's like, "Did you lock the door?" I'm like, "We're in Bristol, babe. It's okay. We're fine." Not Bristol, UK.
No,
Bristol's, yeah, my hometown, Virginia, Tennessee.
you wouldn't do that in Bristol, UK, I don't think.
Right. So we'll have to put another disclaimer up
Sorry,
about
Bristolians.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the point of making friends with locals. So let's talk about both locals and expats. How do you meet people and what can you do for fun?
For me, social media has been invaluable with
Mm,
that. That and traditional social media in Portugal, going to cafes, talking to people in the street.
yep.
Serious,
Yeah, yeah.
that's another standing joke of Portugal. Is the CCTV are the donnas and grandmas, avos who are looking out of the window as you go past, and that level of real social media, sociability. You've got to engage with that as far as I'm concerned. Certainly,
Mm,
if you're coming here, probably good advice if you go anywhere. Say hello to everybody you
yeah.
pass. For two reasons. One is because it's very good for you and your social life, and
Mm,
you will meet people, and they'll introduce you to somebody else. But you'll also look a bit odd if you don't do that. That's going to work against you if you don't. And you practice at getting the balance right. Not too forthright. Let them make the running, but not too standoffish. Or, yeah, and work on that balance. But it's definitely make yourself available socially where you live. Really important, especially in the quieter areas in the countryside and so on, and social media as well. Get on the groups and ask questions and be open as possible. Be safe, but be open.
So guys, I've said it before, Carl is your man in Portugal. Let me ask you this, Carl, because you do throw out Portuguese words whenever you're doing your shows. Do you need to know Portuguese to live in Portugal? And then how valuable do you find knowing Portuguese living there?
The most important thing is to try.
Try.
I cannot claim in any way. I mean, this morning, the Good Morning Portugal show, which I do, I say something in Portuguese, and then I'm so delighted because actually, not just expats, but Portuguese people watch, and they're on me,
Yep.
pouncing on me with phonetic pronunciations of words. And then they'd like, no, not like that. And I think I had three of them coaching me this morning, talking about Alcácer do Sal, down near Setúbal, south of Lisbon, and I couldn't get it right. And there they were. But even though I felt quite told off and borderline undermined, they were coming from a good place,
Right.
and they love it that I have a go. I'm sure of that, and that is a general rule in Portugal. I don't like to think of it as a difficult language, but it is. They even say that. But the key thing is to be trying, is to have a go and learn the basics. Learn the words that represent your good manners. The obrigado, obrigada if you're a woman. For British people, it's very important to say sorry, of course. So that
Right.
was one of the new words I learned. Desculpa, but just the basics. Com licença, excuse me, and try. Like yesterday, I picked up the phone to a phone call, pure Portuguese in my ear. I could basically hear things, but in the stress of that, I couldn't. I could hear this man's frustration when I'm saying "Desculpa, não fala português," and eventually we got to a position where he spoke English to me. He said, "I've delivered a parcel. Bye." It was a bit. It was great that he did that service, to ring me up to say that he just delivered a parcel. But I think it's like I tried. I really
Hmm.
tried.
Hmm.
And he tried, and then eventually he spoke English. And that's the situation that you'll find yourself in a lot of the time, is that actually a lot of people want to speak English because they want to practice their English, and a
Hmm.
lot of people do speak English. But if you begin with the Portuguese and you show yourself as somebody willing to integrate, share, be there and giving it a go, that goes a really long way with Portuguese people. No, of course it would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've started to open up with is I'll just go ahead and say, desculpa, não fala português muito bem, and then it'll be like então, so, and then I'll continue on with what I'm trying to say in Portuguese. But I think by going ahead and like showing my cards and being like, I don't speak Portuguese well, but I'm gonna give it a go. I've never had anybody that was upset with me. Now, one of the problems that I've found, at least in Porto, is that as soon as you let them know that you don't speak Portuguese, they just go straight to English. So it's been a bit difficult for me trying to practice and learn Portuguese with people switching to English. So some of the restaurants that we go to, or went to, I should say, when I found out that the service staff didn't speak English or speak English well, I'm like, we're going to come back,
Yes, yes,
you
that's a really
know?
good environment to put yourself in. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but be the guy, be the girl who has a go. I think
Mm.
that is really important.
Let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about healthcare. How is the healthcare in Portugal? Because I know that this is a question that a lot of our audience has.
Yeah.
So how's the healthcare, and would you feel comfortable getting a procedure done?
Yes, kind of God forbid, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I don't need to. I mean, the closest we've come to that is when Louisa, my wife, was having our baby who was born here.
Hmm.
And, we had some complications at certain points, and we went to a local. That was pretty scary actually, and that prompted us to take out a medical insurance with our bank, with the Millennium Bank. So that's quite an easy way of doing it, incidentally, and it was something like €50 for the whole family, which gave us access to. And I know North Americans hearing that €50, not per day, per month. Um,
Per
we
minute.
Yeah, yeah. Once you're inside the hospital, it's 50 per minute in
Right.
America.
That's it.
Um, but we were 50 odd euros for cover, and you could ring a number. This was the most reassuring thing. Once we'd signed up for that, we could pick up a phone and speak to somebody in English. And like I say, it's important to have a go. But when you're stressed and in a medical situation, a bit like some of the financial situations, you want to be able to speak English if possible, right? If you
Hmm.
definitely don't speak Portuguese, we were able to speak to somebody who kind of signposted us to a consultant in the nearest hospital. All of that for a family of four at the time for just over €50 a month. And you can make your own comparison there. There is no comparison, is there, with North America, for example?
No.
And a different comparison with the United Kingdom, obviously. And then, yeah, when we needed a scan for the baby, we walked in. We were spending a few days in the south, and we looked up online where there was, whatever it is, I don't know what those people, professionals, radiographers or whatever, but a walk-in service. Went in, by the 5D, by the 3D, or the 2D service, whichever you want to see, get the ultrasound of the baby. And I think that was $100. Walk in, do it. I mean, there is no comparison with some of the
Yeah.
most expensive places in the world. And I would absolutely trust, if I had to have a procedure with the national health system here, which there is. They're not going to turn you away in a hospital here. You can use the national health system here, and you can top it up with private. So it's very, very flexible, and I would say very, very good.
I think that that's going to be really reassuring for a lot of people, especially families and older people looking to move to Portugal. It's important, right? It's really important to take care of the health and to be able to have that insurance, if you will. So that's awesome. Well, before we ask our last couple of questions, I did want to talk a little bit about what you do and how your resource helps expats moving to Portugal. So if you could tell us kind of what you're doing on social media.
Well, it's connected with your first question. Like, what do you do for work
Right.
when you come to Portugal? And the project I mentioned, OurNet, is a social network. And for the first couple of years being in Portugal, I had that contract. I was helping my friend Michael Brody develop OurNet. And I experienced, and I'm very happy to tell people about this, in a different occasion, about engaging with the innovation and startup culture in Portugal, because we had a great experience of that in Lisbon and up in Aveiro with the university there. But that came to an end for me, as one of those scary times. Here, there I am in Portugal. I'm working with Michael on OurNet. Obviously, it becomes difficult for him as well, because the developing the project as you're going into global lockdown, not the ideal time to be developing something. And we amicably part ways at that point. Worst possible time, but I understand his situation, and we remain very good friends to this day. But I'm there thinking, okay, what do I do? What do we do? And we have my wife's an astrologer. So she ramped up her astrology business, working online with mostly with Americans actually, and some UK people. And for me, it was I'd been doing a podcast about moving to Portugal, the family moving to Portugal, and I thought, okay, what's needed now in the pandemic is a service, maybe a live stream service each morning to let expats know what to do in English, because
Hmm.
here we are in the first lockdown in Portugal, or approaching it, and the whole sort of drama of that, and difficulty of that, and the anxiety of that. So I think to myself, okay, what can I do to extend my podcast? I've done one or two radio shows of that nature, helping people move to Portugal and enjoy Portuguese culture. I'll live stream and let expats know what to do in relation to the emergency restrictions. That's how it started.
Did it? Okay.
That's how it started, as a daily interviewing people. Interviewing David Thomas, now MBE of Safe Communities Portugal, talking to real mavericks about COVID with some very out there sort of theories about it. Talking to other people, commentators about it, sharing news from English news sources, and just hoping to help people calm their anxiety about it and have an English language service. And here we are, we're nearly a year into it, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I've been broadcasting daily, started off on, with coffee, that donation system where, whilst, people can subscribe.
Give me a coffee or something like
Yeah,
that.
coffee.com,
Yeah.
Patreon style,
Yep.
basically crowdfunding. So
Yep.
that's what I do. I would have a crowd-funded information service, English speaking, and then eventually some other people saw it, and it's like, well, we'd like to integrate this with what we do. And after after a full start with that, I made a connection with Expats Portugal, and now I am part of the company. That they made me a great offer, and I've been able to develop what I do and grow the audience. And I'm now a director of Expats Portugal, and carrying on delivering the same sort of service to expats in English. And it's just broadened, sort of tested in the most difficult of times, and it clearly ticks some boxes for some people, and we've got a lovely community now.
Oh, that's brilliant. Awesome. Well, if you guys are interested, I've got two more questions for Carl, but if you guys are interested in what he does, we've got links in the description section below, so you guys can check that out. If you like what he does, subscribe to his YouTube channel and have a bunch of fun every morning and some evenings, especially on Fridays. I hope you continue with the man cave. Love jumping on there.
Yes.
So my last two questions, one is a very standard question that gets answered a lot on YouTube, which is, what are the pros and cons of living in Portugal?
Pros, the people, the culture, the climate, that's well documented, and it's true.
Yep.
Okay, although that said, we've had a very cold winter. It's been a notably cold winter, and made more difficult by lockdown, but still through that, I'm seeing now the temperature is rising, it's milder, and we're seeing those beautiful Portuguese blue skies. That is the backdrop of this Portuguese life at the best of times. Beautiful blue skies, temperatures, all relative, but for a UK guy, this is where I wanted to be. Life is warmer meteorologically in terms of climate, and life is warmer in terms of people and culture. The Portuguese people are fabulous, and what they have, what they prize, what they're actually quite secretive about. I mean, not secretive, but they're very understated about it. The food and the wine, so many things about the culture. You would think, why doesn't the whole world know about this?
Mm-hmm.
And because they're quietly enjoying it for themselves. And all of that, food, wine, culture, people, weather, well documented, well known, and I can say it's true. And then the cons, again, also well documented, like the language and the bureaucracy. I would be a Pollyanna if I said, oh no, they're not a problem, because occasionally they are, and that's made more difficult, isn't it? If you don't speak the language, and it is a difficult language. That is a curve for sure, a learning curve to address and give it a good go. Remember why you came here. Is my advice to people. So if you came here to have a calm and tranquil existence, remember that while you're sat in a queue of 20 people, when you've got your bit of paper and you're thinking, when will this end? It will end, and it's part of learning to be patient and calm in public life in Portugal. That's why you came here, remember. There's no point getting worked up about it now. Take a book, take your tablet, take a packed lunch, whatever, take a chill pill and sit there and be Portuguese about it, would be my advice. And those are the cons as that come immediately to mind.
Be Portuguese about it. Words to remember.
Yes, absolutely.
At Expats Everywhere, we believe that living abroad transforms lives. How
Yes.
has living abroad transformed your life?
Oh, well, I mean, we've had the added, pandemic curveball. Well, one way of answering that is if I think my life would be a lot more difficult if I were back in the UK. That there is that sort of that's kind of negative transformation, isn't it? It would be worse. In
That was a
terms,
very British answer of you.
really, what have a thinly veiled complaint? Yeah. Um, ah, I think it is something to do with tuning into that Portuguese, be Portuguese about it. I do like the kind of well, I love the easygoingness of the Portuguese and the emphasis on family life and and food and wine. Looking out on a vineyard here. I love how that's a central part of people's lives here.
Hmm.
And I suppose in terms of transformation, it's given me I sense this would be the case. Coming to Portugal would make it easier to live life in the way I wanted to. And it was a big risk for my wife because she'd never been, and she trusted me and followed me to Portugal to do that. And I think I speak for both of us when I say how we would like to live in life with the emphasis on family. And I would like to say not working too hard, but that's not true. I mean, we both work far too much but that's just part of things at the moment.
Yep.
But what we really feel to be true and dear to us in life is enabled by the way Portuguese people go about life, for sure.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. That's great. If you guys are interested in learning more about Portugal, we have a huge playlist that you guys can click on. So check out that playlist. We've got a ton of resources there. Carl Munson, our man in Portugal, we appreciate your time with Expats Everywhere.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I love what you guys do too as well.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you later.
Bye for now.
Bye.